Is dating harder for men or women after 60 years old or in your 60s? And I can talk from my experience of being in the dating pool, putting myself on online dating, meeting men, and it kind of correlated with the research that I ended up seeing. And, I think women have less choices, to be honest. I think there are less emotionally available, healthy men out there, just in general. However, I think the men that are out there, why I think it's difficult is men don't necessarily they're not as flexible in communication, especially men that have been divorced, or if you're dating in your 60s and you're dating a man that's never been married, there's never been that starter marriage. It's definitely not easy. But I don't think men just generally can be emotionally as easily as vulnerable. And it has actually been my experience in some of the men that I did dated that they were either dating too soon, they haven't really processed where they were at, or they were kind of like over it and not kind of knowing what they were looking for. And I think women in our 60s that have been married and divorced, or maybe single and never been married, we're at the point where we probably had careers, we've been married and divorced, we know what we're doing, and there's a level of independence that I think can be intimidating. And it's interesting because I've been told this, actually very recently, that I can be very intimidating. And maybe it's because I know what I want. And that's a blessing. It's taken me a long time to actually figure out and know what I want. So I think the answer to this question is I think there's benefits and not benefits to both sides of it. Less dating pool for women to men, but that's always how it is. And I think for men, I think it's emotionally more difficult to go out there in your 60s and you're like, how am I going to meet people? So they go to the dating app and it's not something they're necessarily comfortable with. And again, I've experienced that, men that I've met online and, whatever. It's just like too soon, too much, too quick, whatever. Or then you meet them in person and they don't know how to go from A to B they're just ill-equipped in this way. And I think what I would say to all men and women is get uncomfortable. It's not a straight line. Know what you want and know what your boundaries are, and think about what didn't work in your previous relationship, whether it was a marriage or not, and just kind of put yourself out there with boundaries and see what happens. And it's kind of where I've been at, and I'm pleasantly surprised. And that'll be a whole other video that we'll talk about later. So anyway, get out there. That's all I would say. You have to get out there.